Good morning, this is Kris Shoemaker, also known as Yehudah ben Shomeyr, and you're listening to Coffee with Kris, the time of the day where we share a cup of coffee and share a bit of the Word of God. All right, we've made it to the end of the week. Therefore, I'm combining Friday and Saturday's Aliyah and Sidra into one day. And so it is Numbers chapter 15, verses 17 through 41 of this Torah portion of Shelach Lakah, send on your behalf. And I'm just going to focus in on verses 32 through 41, because there's just a really important story that we have here. It says, when the people of Israel were in the desert, they found a man gathering wood on Shabbat. Remember the law, you shall not kindle a fire on the Sabbath. Is there anything wrong with turning on a light switch or flicking a Bic lighter or turning on a stove? No, because these are switches. It's not labor. It's not a job to flip a switch or to turn a knob on a stove. That's not the point. That's not the point of the prohibition of do not kindle a fire on the Sabbath. The main thrust of the prohibition of kindling a fire on the Sabbath is the kindling part, not the fire, but the kindling part. Why? Because it's not like they struck a match or they turned a knob and all of a sudden fire appeared or they flipped on a light switch. They had to go out into the forest. They had to chop down saplings and chop down trees. They had to make the tree into smaller portions of logs. They had to haul the logs into the camp. Then they had to split the logs. And then they had to build a fire, dig a pit and build a fire and put stones around it to make a fire pit. And then they had to rub two sticks together or click two flint stones together in order to produce fire. This was hours of work. This was hours of labor. They were to make the fire prior to the Sabbath and just keep it stoked, keep it burning all through Sabbath so they didn't have to make a fire. It was sweat, labor, blood, sweat, and tears, hard, laborious work to kindle a fire. The kindling is the prohibition, not the fire itself. So it says, while the people of Israel were in the desert, they found a man gathering wood on Shabbat, which he was attempting to kindle. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses, Aaron, and the whole congregation, basically meaning the judges, the 70 elders. They kept him in custody because it had not been decided yet what to do with him. Then Adonai said to Moses, "This man must be put to death, and the entire community is to stone him to death outside the camp." Pretty harsh. Really? Well, it's no different than saying don't eat of this tree. It was just one rule. What's the big deal of taking a bite of forbidden fruit? The big deal is you broke God's law. God said don't, and you did. Therefore, you get kicked out of the garden. Therefore, you break, one of God's laws. It's a death penalty in some cases. So it says, this man must be put to death, and the entire community is to stone him to death outside the camp. So the whole community brought him outside the camp and threw stones at him until he died. And Adonai ordered Moses, when somebody is punished, it is a deterrent to other people not to do what that person did in order to get punished. God said, don't kindle a fire on the Sabbath. Don't go out gathering wood. Don't go out working on the Sabbath. It's your day of rest. What's the big deal? I saw this guy do it. Yeah, what happened to that guy? He got stoned to death. Ooh, okay, then I know not to do that. I know that there's consequences for breaking rules. That's what we're losing today in our society because of these soft laws and soft judges. We're losing that thing regarding the consequences of breaking the law. And these consequences are the deterrents. And so they do need to be pretty dramatic and drastic and harsh in order to get the point across, because sometimes it's only how stiff-necked and stubborn people will understand anything. Now, here's the safeguard. You don't have to go the route of stoning somebody. You don't have to go to the route of the death penalty because God gives us a reminder. Just like a check engine light says, hey, there's something wrong with your car. You're low on oil, your tire's flat, or there's something wrong with the engine. You got to check it out. It's a warning light. Do something now or something worse will happen. God does the same thing with us. He gave this command right after this guy got stoned for picking up sticks on Shabbat. In verse 37, it says, Adonai said to Moses, speak to the people, speak to Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, and instruct them to make through all their generations. In other words, this law has not been done away with. It's still applicable for today. To put zitziot, to put fringes, tassels, on the corner of their garments, and to put with the zitzit, the tassel, the fringe, on each corner a thread of blue. Why? Well, okay, back in the day when you needed to remind yourself to do something, some people used to before we had smartphones that had alarms to remind us to do things, we put a string around our finger to, why is this string there? Oh, I remember I was supposed to do such and such. Well, the string on the finger is like the fringes, the tassels, the tzitzit on the four-cornered garments of a believer, of a Jewish person, of a Hebrew, of an Israelite. It was to remind them of God's laws. Verse 39, it is to be tzitzit, fringe, tassel for you to look at and thereby remember, just like a string on the finger, all of Adonai's mitzvot, commandments. And why? To obey them. Now, and then it says, so that you won't go around wherever your own heart and eyes lead you to prostitute yourselves. There's an interesting rabbinic story about this rabbi who just fell head over heels for this gorgeous, beautiful prostitute. He knew this woman was forbidden for him, but he just couldn't get her out of his mind. So he concocted a way to be with her. So he finally made the date. He had the money, getting ready to, to pay the bill. And so, she's there, ready, laying on the bed. He gets so excited, he starts ripping off his clothes. As he rips off his clothes, when he takes off his four-cornered garment, which had the tassel, which had the fringe and the tzitzit, it slapped him in the face. He stopped. And the tzitzit did its job to remind him of the commandments. He says, look, I can't do this. She's like, what? Is there something wrong with me? Am I not acceptable? Am I not beautiful? He says, no. I want this more than anything. But I've just been reminded I can't do this. I've got to be loyal to my God. This prostitute was so impressed that she ended up becoming a convert. And eventually, her and the rabbi got married. So it's a pretty interesting story, but it talks about how the tzitzit saved this rabbi from committing fornication and breaking God's law. And so verse 40 says, but it will help you remember and obey all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God who has brought you out of the land of Egypt in order to be your God. I am Adonai your God. So these fringes are tied and wrapped in a very special way. There are 5 knots representing the 5 books of Moses, representing the 613 commandments of the Torah. They have 4 coils of blue, which represents the 4-letter name of God, Yud He Vav He. And this is the fringe, this is the hem of the garment that the woman with the issue of blood touched and was healed thereof, because it represented the word and name of God, which is power in the word, power in the name, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us, and the word is our healing. By his stripes we are healed. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Hope you have a great day. Go and do something great for the Lord today. Shalom and God bless.